Welcome to Fast Politics,
Hi,
Carol.
Molly. So nice to be here. Great fan. Great fan.
Well, it's very mutual. So your journey started with the journey of Brexit.
Which journey are we talking? How many
Well,
journeys?
I feel like I want you to give us for those
Who
who
am
are
I?
not as dialed in as Jesse and I are.
Who the hell is this British chick and what's she doing on your podcast? Is that the question?
Great. Yeah.
Oh,
Who the
all
hell is
right.
this? Is
So,
you can do this with, yeah.
yeah,
Just,
is that
yes.
so basically who am I? I am an investigative journalist. I was until 3 weeks ago a Guardian journalist, but I have been expelled now from the mainstream media. I've been clinging on. But anyway, the Guardian sold my bit of the organization. And so anyway, long story, but I'm out. And but I'm enjoying my liberty and freedom, I have to tell you, which enables me to be quite punchy, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always been pretty punchy, but I feel that I don't know, something about age is becoming more so. But to answer the question, I essentially, my beat became in 2016, my beat really became this thing which was the intersection of technology and politics. And of course, that means technology and democracy. And I was kind of just terrified. I'd been reporting on tech for quite a long time by that stage, but very much was generalist. Like I'm a feature writer, that's my background.
Mhm.
So it's very much about like explaining to the world how this stuff worked rather than doing the sort of like minute, "Ooh, here's a great new product." Anyway, in that sort of I sort of became terrified about what I discovered in the 2016. It was really actually the thing which really sent me down the rabbit hole was the election of Trump. And then that I started pulling on a string and I discovered this really shady data company called Cambridge Analytica. And little by little, I pulled that string and sort of discovered this huge scandal, the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, which was this massive data breach in which 87 million people's Facebook profiles were harvested and then used essentially to help elect Trump. And the same company and the same people, it was very much there was this totally kind of twin operation you could see between Brexit and Trump. And just it was the same people, it was the same companies, it was the same data. We had the same kinds of bad actors, the same foreign interference. And so that sort of question of how these tech platforms essentially facilitated a complete revolution in the way that we do campaigning and politics,
Mhm.
completely opaque, completely unaccountable, and and have caused a convulsion in what we think of as democracy. And I would argue doesn't really, you know, there's a very big question about whether that still exists in this online world. Did that work?
Oh,
In a
yeah,
nutshell?
that did work, but it's pretty heavy. I mean, it's very heavy stuff.
Oh, it's quite
So,
heavy. Yeah, it's quite heavy. I
yes.
mean, it's this. I mean, it's amazing actually. Weirdly, I have this thing of that. I actually weirdly feel more cheerful right now than I did for really long periods of this time, and it's because the threat is now visible, right?
Yeah.
That Elon
Yeah.
has at least done us all a favor in like, oh, okay, Silicon Valley, these tech companies, what they're doing, what the AI, like the centralized power, the totally unaccountable power. We now get it in a
Get it.
way,
Yes.
but
And we
we're
didn't
starting on
before.
the journey. I feel like we're now starting on the journey of at least getting it.
So you had an incredible TED Talk that where you talked about techno authoritarianism, right? That's what it really is. Getting your data, using it to control you. Sort of the worst of authoritarianism and the worst of data mining coming together. That's the Elon Musk part and the Heritage Foundation part coming together to rule the world. Talk us through kind of how you got to this thesis.
I don't think it's a thesis. I think it is reality. I mean,
Yeah. No, no, but it is
yeah,
reality, but it's
yeah,
it,
yeah,
it,
yeah.
you to sum it up, sort of to you know.
To sum it up, is that we live in a surveillance society, right? Every single thing, our entire economy, the entire online economy is predicated on knowing what we're up to online and tracking that and monetizing that. And that underpins these, trillion-dollar tech companies. That's their model. That's what they're based on. They're based on knowing who we are, and they know who we are by gathering this data about us. And you can everybody was sort of like had different, "Oh, I don't care anyway. Like, I don't care about my privacy. It doesn't matter to me. Oh, I've got nothing to hide." Like, that was the sort of mentality which built Silicon Valley. But now Silicon Valley is we've seen this merger take place between Silicon Valley and the most powerful superpower in the world. And those two things have now come together. And so that power, that all-seeing, all-knowing power coming together with a superpower, with nuclear weapons, which is reshaping the world order, we this is if you're not terrified, it is because you are not paying attention. And I feel really bad saying that, because I am based here in London, and I am 1 degree removed from what is happening in America, but it's only 1 degree removed.
You don't have to apologize for things not being as bad where you are than where we are. And I think we talked when we were talking offline before, you were saying you actually feel a little better. And I actually feel a little better too, because some of the stuff we saw, and I had a similar experience with Project 2025, which is I was like,
Mm.
holy shit, this is going to gut the entire federal government. Like, if they enact this, it is going to be the end of rural hospitals and rural nursing homes and this and that. And I was like, and the, administrative state. I mean, the goal is to dismantle everything you get from the federal government. And now that it's happening, I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, this was actually what it was. And I feel like you have that same thought. So talk to us.
I've been Britain's premier conspiracy theorist for a decade. I mean, I sort of hold that title. I've been a cultural hate figure
Right.
because I investigated Brexit, which, it was a totally evidence-based journalistic investigation. However, because it was into a political matter with such divisiveness in Britain, I got tarred and smeared and feathered.
Yeah,
Basically,
take it.
I was like hung out to dry and multiply harassed and all the rest of it, because the way of undermining my reporting was to undermine me, and the way of undermining me was to go after me in this very personal, misogynistic way. And yeah, the conspiracy theory of around this stuff has been, it's kind of interesting. I actually haven't had that for a little while. I mean, I'm sure it will
Yeah.
come back in another form,
We
but it turned out it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a conspiracy.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think that's like Brexit is a great example because it's over and it's clearly was a disaster, right? They didn't want Polish plumbers coming into the country, so they sanctioned themselves, and it's been a complete disaster, right?
I wish I could say that's the thing is that we have, because of the sort of nobody has any consensus of reality anymore, because of the way that the tech platforms, the way that we consume information. So there is no consensus of reality in Britain that Brexit was a disaster, to such
Really?
a degree, that our supposedly left wing Labour government can't even talk about this, right? That still is a verboten subject, which they just don't want to go near. Because also in Britain, our media landscape is totally dominated by still powerful, less powerful than it was, but a
Right.
still powerful right-wing corporate and sort of oligarchic media. And they've made the political agenda for years, for decades, and they still have a sort of huge amount of power that way. So yeah, so sadly, although by every demonstrable and measurable index, yes, it has been a disaster, but we still can't get people to own that.
That is so incredibly shocking to me, but okay. I want you to talk about the data and what it looks like to you. So in 2016, it was Facebook. I think of Mark Zuckerberg as like significantly more evil than Elon Musk, despite the fact that Elon Musk reads as more evil than Mark Zuckerberg, because Elon Musk, and again, this is this idea. So Elon Musk is out about what he's doing. So talk to us about that.
Why so? I'm really curious. Why do you think Zuckerberg's more evil? Go on, give me your.
Because he pretends to not be evil, whereas Elon is like full on, we want, poor, it's like, why do these poor people get food when we could just be giving tax cuts to huge corporations? Whereas I feel like Mark Zuckerberg is like, we're here to connect everyone. We are here for connection. And then it's like, and the Rohingya genocide,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I mean, also as well, it's the thing about Zuckerberg is that there's a sleight of hand with
Right,
him in that, they keep renaming shit. So it's like I refuse to call it Meta. I'm still calling it Facebook. They renamed it Meta to sort of like wipe the stink off all the Facebook scandals. But I'm sorry
right,
that I'm not flying with that. And the sleight of hand is that Facebook, it's Instagram, it's WhatsApp, it's and those people always forget that. You always have these youngsters saying, "Oh, I'm not on Facebook. I don't have anything to do with Meta." And it's like, yeah, but do
right.
you use Instagram? And of course they use Instagram. So it's like, and then of course, and like I have a verboten policy on, and now I'm on WhatsApp, and actually I've just joined Instagram. In terms of the world's population and use of his products, yeah, he does win, and there is actually global domination there. And there is a really interesting case happening at the moment, which is they are looking to break up
Antitrust, yeah.
with the antitrust thing. And of course, it's not a coincidence that he's cozying up to Trump, right? I mean, it's he's got a lot to lose. He's got a lot
Yeah.
to lose. I think that the difference is that back in 2016, the reason why that was such a moment and why he was so culpable is because it was Facebook, which was where politics, where campaigning was being conducted.
Mhm.
We had much more centralized sort of social media landscape at that time. Now it's much more scattered. There's so many other. It's, there's
Blue sky.
the TikTok of it and the YouTube and all the rest of it. Like that's where a lot of the sort of money is being spent now. What's
Yeah,
interesting about
gone.
the Facebook Cambridge Analytica thing, in a way, it's a model, it's a parable for what Musk has been doing inside the government, which is that, Cambridge Analytica was hoovering up this Facebook data
Mhm.
to then build algorithms to really understand who these people were, to then target them politically. So why is Musk hoovering up all of this data from inside government? What's he doing it? The most valuable resource in the world for, the competition, the game now is all AI. You want to build the best AI, that's where the race is on. And to build the best AI, you need the best sources of data. And here he, has been inside the US government with absolutely kid in a candy shop with, the entire population's highly, highly sensitive different pieces of data, including financial and social security and all the rest of it. That's the thing I find the most terrifying in the sense like you capture that, you capture the future in a way.
On Twitter already, we're seeing like fake tweets by fake people. So but just explain to me the goal here. Fake people create fake tweets that real people read and think that more people believe something than really do. I mean, just
You
explain
know,
to me.
it's because it's a very complex landscape, and it was really funny. There was this quite senior political journalist during the Brexit years. He was he was on some political program, and he said a Russian bot didn't tell my granny to vote for Brexit, and that was his why. This is all a load of rubbish, and it just like it the way that the different ways that there's sort of these mechanized forms work and now so much more sophisticated because of AI is a lot of what they're doing is manipulating reality. So the
Right.
classic thing on Twitter would be those nameless people things. They would like, they'd glom onto different hashtags. You get the hashtags to trend, and
Right.
then real people look to see what's happening. It's ways, well, there's lots of different ways of manipulating people's sentiments. And we don't realize it's invisible, but they do really impact things like the news agenda.
So here's a question for you, because I definitely have, I come from internet circa I come from the 90s, right? I'm that old. What has happened with me is I've just stopped trusting things I see online. So if I see a picture of Donald Trump as the Pope, I don't assume Donald Trump is the new Pope, because I know that there's, and AI looks a little different. You can tell what it is. But is that isn't that what everyone is just going to not trust anything because there's no fact checking?
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing happening. I mean, that's where that and this loss of trust which goes along with that is a loss of trust in everything, isn't it? It's a loss of trust in institutions. It's a loss of trust in news organizations. We're seeing it's a loss of trust in, government bodies. This is across the board. And, that in itself is terrifying, isn't it? And, this is where I sort of say it's that these terms which we started learning in 2016, misinformation and disinformation, like that's gone. Like
Right.
forget that now. Like this is, I sort of talk about sort of total information collapse. Like
Yeah.
this now we are in total information chaos. And that's, it's why it's so hard for any of us to, like, process and navigate what on earth is going on, because we just face this chaotic cacophony of voices and noise and, funny memes and cat videos and images but, weirdly, Molly, I actually do feel like there is something here which gives me it's bizarre how, like, more optimistic I am at the moment than I was
Yeah,
before.
me too.
Because now that we can see the problem and now we can see the crisis, we can actually now start thinking about solutions. That's the thing. And so it is this, like, out of crisis comes opportunity. So for
Yeah.
me, and, it's kind of like I have a very particular skin in this game. But for me, what's now so important is that we have to build proper independent media that people can
Right.
trust, right?
Right,
And we've
right.
we've seen the way that these big corporates, in America are bowing down to Trump. They can't stand up things. They've got, their theme park to worry about.
Right, and
Ah,
their
well,
space
where
stuff,
people
yeah,
are going, Ollie, is to you, aren't they? Like, this is where actually you've got to be out there, like,
right.
being more popular than Joe Rogan, Molly. That is now your job.
Um, I have to tell you the funniest part though, just on this information idea is I started putting on Instagram like tweets that I thought were important for people because I knew that there were a lot of people who couldn't
Right,
stand
yeah.
Twitter anymore and that there were things that were relevant and important that they might never see. I mean, this is the fundamental problem. So I started putting them on Instagram and I was at White House Correspondents Weekend like 2 weeks ago and a number of like real television people like anchors and whatever intellect were like, I find your Instagram very useful. And
Wow.
but that's because like the problem is we don't have a great aggregation engine anymore.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it is like we are like it's and unless you spend 12 hours a day online, which luckily I do, you don't have like a pastis of
Yeah,
everything that is happening. So you miss like you miss Elon Musk melting down about his,
yeah.
you know, possible child with a possible influencer. You know what I mean? You miss all of that. And then you'll see something else and it won't make sense because you won't have the entire story.
Yeah, that's so funny because my first Instagram post was, like, a screenshot of my tweet, okay?
Yeah.
It was very funny because a friend saw it and she was like, "No, Carol, no, you need to be, like you need to be showing your eyebrows and, like, doing a selfie with, like, other."
No,
And I was like, "No." Anyway,
no.
we were
I
having a
mean,
laugh about it.
is culture is downstream of politics, politics, culture, discuss.
So this was yeah, so I used this line in my TED Talk, which is from
Right.
Steve Bannon stole it
Bannon, but it's
from him.
really from Breitbart. It's from,
It's
yeah,
I think this thing which is that most people honestly don't care about politics, and but yet, they're not watching the political news. They're not watching the political pundits. This isn't where the important stuff is being discussed, but where the thing which ahead of the election, the US, it's the podcast bros, like it's the YouTube bros. And at the moment, those bros who are on broy platforms with
right.
algorithms built by bros to which prioritizes bro content. That is where the sort of conversation is. That's where the dial is shifting, and that is culture. And that for me is the sort of key thing about, to go back to the tech of it, right? Which is the YouTube algorithm kind of terrifies me in that way. YouTube is
Yeah.
the ground zero of the manosphere. Misogyny is wrapped up in everything that we're seeing now. But I feel that, like, in order to reclaim that space, we need people like you out
Mhm.
talking to, and for as many people listening to you as possible. And yeah, we have to, in order to reclaim the politics, we need to kind of first regain the culture. And part of the way that we have to reclaim the culture, the long view, is we need to build better platforms which are not owned
Yeah.
by these terrible Silicon Valley tech companies. That's the
Yeah.
long,
Yep.
but
Co
my
I'm so excited. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was amazing. I really appreciate you. Just exactly what I
Marty,
want to talk about. So thank you.
thank you for having me on, and I really look forward to seeing you in London and talking about your book.